Hi there, this is Dan, and this is my conversion story, really. This happened way back in 2017, and it's been quite a few years since this happened, but it's taken me this long to kind of understand exactly the gravity of what happened to me and even be able to put it into words and to even be able to tell this story without getting emotional, even though I probably still will. But I felt compelled to share this with you guys because this is quite profound, and it kind of threw me for a loop, and I didn't really expect things to go down this way. But I wanted to tell you why I decided to turn my life over to Jesus Christ and what happened in my life that kind of nudged me in that direction, if you will. So it was a powerful nudge. So I'm just going to get right into it. I consider this miracle number one in my life when God showed me his love. I'm now in my 40s. This happened back in 2017, the summer of 2017, where I really just started to break down into a spiritual crisis. Really what happened was I've lived my whole life just kind of living for myself. I guess people who knew me wouldn't say that I was a evil person or a bad person, but I know my heart, and I know that I would have run anybody over in a heartbeat to get what I wanted. I was just the type of person who was, who smiled and was nice on the outside, but really just if I couldn't take something from you, you didn't mean anything to me. And that is how I lived my life. And I just really didn't care about my fellow man, my neighbor. I lived life for myself. And that caused me to start living in a life of sin. I just didn't care about any of the ramifications from any of my actions. There was no accountability, spiritual accountability. I just felt that, if there was a God and he made this earth, it was just our playground and we could make a mess of it. And honestly, at the time, looking around, I just didn't really see how God played any kind of a role in our day-to-day lives because, look at this place, look at this planet. It's a mess. It's an absolute mess. And if there was a God, he obviously had turned his back on us, right? Because, we're trashing the place. I was just the embodiment of what you turn into when you don't have any type of spiritual direction. You basically live for yourself, and that's how I lived for a very long time. You name it, I've done it. Okay, well, I guess I didn't kill anybody, so I'm not that bad. It doesn't matter. A sin is a sin. I got to the point where I started to realize that if there was a heaven, I'm not going, because I would not want to be in heaven with people like me. If heaven had people like me in it, sinners and liars and cheaters and stealers and people who live for themselves, people who are selfish and self-absorbed and didn't care about others and didn't care about this world and didn't care about, anything except taking for themselves, how could there be a heaven full of people like that? And that was my first realization that I'm not going there. There's no room for people like me there. And it started to crush me from the inside out. It's almost as if my spirituality imploded. I just collapsed because I just realized, wow, I am so far away. And it's not about being a good person. That's part of it. It's about I had no love in my heart for anyone else. And not even any love for God, honestly. Where does that put you? I don't belong in any kind of paradise because I am truly a selfish taker. And there's no room for people like that in heaven. So I kind of collapsed. I kind of broke down. I got really depressed. I just realized that I've literally been living according to the flesh. I've been living by my own rules, by what makes me happy, what satisfies me in the moment, with no regard for others. And it was really hard to come to that realization. That was a really dark time in my life. I broke down and I just realized that I am drowning in a life of sin. Every day is sin. All of that I do is sinful because I was all about immediate gratification of myself and at the expense of even the people that I love in this world. I was just a broken, sinful person, and I came to that realization and I didn't know what to do. If there is a heaven, there's nobody like me there. It caused me to think and do some soul searching and realize that I don't know how to pull myself out of this. I don't know how to crawl out. I was drowning. I was underwater and realizing it for the first time, and I was too far gone. And I remember I didn't know what to do. I was driving, and I pulled over at a church, Our Lady of Guadalupe, a Catholic church. I remember getting out and just wanting to get into the church so I could pray for help, just not knowing where else to turn or who to go to, or I couldn't get into the church. It was locked, and I'm like, perfect, you know. I felt it was metaphoric. But I went into the courtyard, and there was this statue of Mary, the Mother of God, Jesus' mom, and this life-size statue of her in the courtyard of the church. And I had heard somewhere, and I wasn't Catholic at the time, but I had heard that if you go and ask Mary for help, honestly pray from the heart, and you ask her for help, or to intercede, to ask her to ask Jesus to help you, that she will not refuse you, and Jesus will not refuse his mother. I heard that somewhere. Okay, well, I can't get into the church, so I'll pray to Mary. I basically knelt down in this courtyard. I was all alone, and there was this life-size statue of Mary, and I said, Mary, I don't know what to do. I said, could you maybe ask Jesus to help me? Because I'm in a bad place. I'm drowning in sin, and I don't know how to get out. So please ask your son if he could help me. And it was an honest prayer. It was a truthful, honest prayer. And so I got in the car, and I drove down the street to a McDonald's parking lot, and I was all by myself, and I pulled over, and I prayed again in that McDonald's parking lot. It wasn't in a church. I prayed to God directly, and I said, God, I am somebody who has turned my back on you my whole life. You didn't matter to me. And I remembered the prayer. I said, God, I know what I can do on my own, because this is it. Here I am, praying to you with tears running down my face, because I've made a mess. And that is what I did with the life you gave me. I can't do it myself. When I do it myself, this is where I end up. This is the product of me doing it myself, and it's a mess. And I need you, God. I need you to take the wheel. I need you to show me how to get out of this mess. I need you to drive, because I can't do it alone. And I realize that now, because I have been doing it alone. I've been living for myself, making all my own decisions without a care in the world, and I've trashed my life, and I don't know how to get out. I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to live righteously. I wouldn't even know where to start. And I said, God, if you are there and you are listening, I need you in my life now. I need you to drive. I need you to steer. I need you to show me the way out of my sin. Because this is all I know. This is all I know how to do. I don't know how to do it any differently. And I've made a mess, and I need help cleaning it up. Please help me, Lord. Show me the way. That was my prayer. And then everything changed. Everything changed after that. What happened was, I went home. This was like a day or so later, and I was really just contemplating the mess I had made of my life. And at that time, I had 2 children. My second child, he was an infant, and I remember I was putting him to bed. I was putting him down for a nap. I had been rocking him in a rocking chair. I was in the nursery, and before I got up from the chair, I was praying while I was rocking him. I realized, why would God forgive me? Like, I was in my late 30s at this point. Why, after 30 some years of snubbing God, of turning my back to God, of ignoring God, of completely being impassive toward God, not even caring, really. Why would he forgive me? I couldn't see it. I couldn't see how God could come to forgive somebody like me. So I prayed and I said, God, why would you forgive somebody like me? Why? I have completely disregarded you and your teachings and your Bible and your word and your church. Why would you now forgive me? I literally asked that in this prayer, and I remember I got up from the rocking chair and I put my infant son in his crib, and he was pretty much asleep at that point. And I turned around to leave the room. And keep in mind, I had just prayed, why would you forgive me? And all of a sudden, I got maybe 2 feet from his crib after I put him in there, walking towards the door, not expecting I was going to get a response. All of a sudden, I felt the words, because I love you. And when I say I felt the words, I didn't hear them with my ears. There wasn't a voice. I received the words, because I love you. And it's so hard for me to explain this to people because they say, so you didn't hear anything, but how do you feel a word? How do you feel a sentence like that? And I say, it was no different than if someone said something to you, and right after they finished talking, it's how you take what they said and you process it. I felt the words, because I love you. But then I felt a love unlike anything I have experienced in my life. In that moment, after I felt the words that said clearly, without discrepancy, because I love you, he just poured out this endless, limitless, infinite love on top of me in that moment. And it was so overwhelming. I remember I fell to my knees in that room. The love that I felt, it was bone crushing. It was so much love. And I knew it wasn't coming from within me because I'm not capable of loving like that. I am not capable of generating the kind of love that I felt in that moment. It was like, the closest thing I could tell you is like, it was like the kind of love that I felt the moment my first son was born. I had so much love for him in that one moment after he was born. That was similar to the love that I felt in that moment when God poured his love on me in that bedroom, in that nursery room. Only the love that I experienced from God was like 1,000 times more powerful than the love that I felt from my newborn son. I don't know how else to describe it. It was like a fatherly love, because I remember when I loved my son when he was born, I remember what that felt like. Like, it's a different kind of love than, say, loving somebody else, like loving your sister or loving your brother or loving your wife or your husband. It's a different type of love. It's a different type of feeling. But I remember it felt like that. It felt like a father-son type of love, but it was so enveloping and it was just so overwhelming. I mean, I honestly felt like, and I don't know how long it lasted, probably 10 seconds. It seemed longer. But I actually felt like I was going to die. I actually felt like my body was going to give up because it was so much love that I felt like almost like it had to strip my flesh away in order for me to fully receive it. I don't know how else to describe it. It was almost like my body was getting in the way, like I had to physically die in order to actually fully see or fully experience what the love truly was for. And I remember like I didn't breathe during that time, and I don't even think my heart beated in my chest during that. I think I just froze. And I remember when I felt the words, because I love you, after I asked in prayer, why would you forgive me? And I felt the words, because I love you. And then I fell to the ground because I felt this overwhelming, bone-crushing love. And I just broke into tears. And I'm like, oh my God. The love that I experienced in that moment changed me for the rest of my life. Because in that moment, I knew that despite everything I had done in my life, despite the horrible person I had become, the mistakes that I had made, I realized that in that moment that God is real and God loves me despite all of that. And even in my darkest, most sinful place, the pit of all despair, God was still there. Even though I couldn't have wandered further away from him and lived a more sinful, self-indulgent life, all I had to do was say, God, I give this back to you. Help me out of it. And he was right there. And he proved it to me. He poured his love on me in that moment in a way that I didn't even know humans could experience. And the amount of love I felt in that moment, it shook me to my core. And it made me realize that I am still loved despite being the horrible person that I had become. And I realized that that is why God would forgive me. God would forgive me because he loved me. This is that simple. And he showed me that day. And he said, because I love you. And when I fell to the ground, I knew that it was the voice of Jesus that said that. Because that kind of love could come from within me, and it didn't. It didn't come from within me. I was receiving it. I was receiving a divine love because I had finally, after 30-some years, talked to my Father. I said, Father, I'm sorry, and I want to change, and I need your help, but I don't know why you would forgive me. And he said, because I love you. It's almost like he said, because I love you this much, and then just dumped it on me. And then I understood. Then I understood why he would forgive me. And that was the beginning of my conversion story. That is when I knew that I was onto something in that moment. That's when I knew I almost shed this skin of sin and was almost reborn for God. And that love that I experienced that day in that bedroom, on the floor for 10 seconds or whatever it was, that is when my life began to change. And it all started from that prayer to Mary in the courtyard, and then that prayer to God in the parking lot of McDonald's when I said, God, I need you to show me the way out of this. I need you to drive. I need you to take the wheel of this life that I've made a mess of, and I need you to show me, how am I supposed to live? Because I don't know how to do it on my own. I need your help. And then when I said, God, why would you forgive me? Why would you bother with me? He said clearly, because I love you. And then he showed me. He showed me his love. 10 seconds of it felt like 10 minutes of it. And I kid you not, I fell to the ground and I was so caught off guard and so absolutely just blown away. I remember the feeling of that intense love, that father to son type of love, that father to child. That's what it felt like. And in that moment, I knew that I was different. Something changed that day in me because I felt God's love. And that's when I knew that I belonged to him. And that's when I knew that I had been doing it all wrong because I'd been doing it alone. And now I'm going to do it with God in my life. And I didn't know what that meant yet. I didn't know what that looks like. I didn't know what I needed to do in that moment. I just know that I needed God to be part of it. And that led to other miracles that God did in my life. That was the first miracle. That was miracle number one. That was when God answered my prayer and showed me his love. But that prayer really came from the heart. when I asked God to take the wheel in my life and show me the way out of my sin. And then when I said, why would you bother forgiving a jerk like me? He said, because I love you. And trust me, I was not deserving of his love. He gives it freely, and he gives it to all of us. All we have to do is just make the decision that we don't want to do it alone, and then reach out honestly and earnestly for him. That's all we have to do. It took me almost 40 years to learn that. I had to get to a point in my life where I realized that I was making a mess of it. And I had to honestly ask God, invite God into my life. I had to invite him. He gives us that choice. He gives us that free will to choose him or refuse him. And that day in the McDonald's parking lot, I chose him. And that just opened up the floodgates of what happened next. So stick around. Check out these other videos that I've posted, because I go into each and every one of these 5 miracles so far that God has performed in my life. I hope that you can subscribe and like these videos, because I really want to get this story out to more people, because the more people that like and subscribe to videos, the more YouTube will put them in front of other people so they can find out about this. Because I'm going to go into each and every one of these miracles that God has performed in my life, and I hope that they touch you and that they show you that you are loved as well, and that all you have to do is choose God, let him in, and decide you want him to take the wheel in your life. And I'm convinced he will perform miracles in your life as well. So thanks for stopping by. Check out the rest of these videos. Thanks for watching this one.